So a quick introduction. I just want to thank everyone for inviting us back to Namibia. So I've been with Veeam 9 years. This was officially my 9th year this month. So for the past 4 or 5 years, I've been managing the SADC region, so all the countries neighboring South Africa. And I often get asked which is my favorite country to visit, and it's not Angola, and it's not Mauritius, it's actually Namibia. I love coming back here. The interaction that I have with the customers here and with our partners is amazing. Okay, so thank you for that. So if you don't know, Veeam historically we're a backup provider. Okay, we're a software company. We don't have our own cloud. We don't have our own hardware, which quite often confuses people. We basically are a software layer that sits in the middle and allows you to back up and recover your data. Okay, so historically, when Veeam was called into action, was when someone had tried to deploy a patch and it broke something. All right, so if there was a flood at the local mall, which I'm surprised that happened in Windhoek, but natural disasters, human error, patches that get deployed, someone changes something in a SQL database and it breaks. So that historically is where Veeam came to the rescue. All right, what has happened pre or during COVID and post-COVID is this ransomware and this malware. So all of a sudden, I'm now having security discussions. But having the likes of Sendmark and Fortinet present before me helps emphasize the risk that your business is at by not having the data that runs your business protected properly. All right, so you can have a look at the stats there, and we've seen it within Veeam. All right, so these guys are malicious. And quite often that malware will sit on your system without your knowledge for anywhere from 3 to 6 months, all right, before they actually sort of instigate this attack on your data. All right, so you need to be able to recover from that data, and you need to be able to have peace of mind that if a disaster happens, you can actually recover. So we've had lots of success stories, and unfortunately we've had customers that haven't implemented the solution correctly, all right, and the data has been deleted. Okay, so quite often these guys will come in and the first thing they'll do is they'll go for your backups, and they are either going to encrypt the data or they're going to try and delete the data. Okay, so what I'm going to go through today is high level what our solution is and what steps you can put in place to prevent that from happening. I don't know if I'm supposed to click the mouse or push that. Okay. So like I said, I've been around for quite some time. I started in IT in 1995, 96, around about then. So, and the landscape has changed. Historically, when I first started working at Veeam, we were talking to customers at VMware and customers at Hyper-V. That was it. That was all that Veeam did, all right? But I'm talking 9 years ago now. And as you're aware, things have changed. So your data center's generally not in the basement of your building. Your company data is spread across multiple locations, and it makes IT's jobs extremely difficult to manage all that data and protect all that data. So what Veeam does is we're giving you the tools to do that. All right, so as the slide shows, threats are increasing. A lot of manual processes, so Salts have already touched on it. So they use our solution as a backup as a service offering. And that gives customers peace of mind that they know that there's someone out there actually testing their backups. All right, Veeam actually automates that process for them, okay, and for you as well as the customer. So if you don't know who Veeam are, so the company was founded in 2008, if I remember correctly, primarily around VMware, okay. And I just want to stress again, because I still get asked this question, no, we are not part of VMware. Okay, we are a totally independent company. We integrate with VMware as well as multiple other hypervisors, but we are not part of VMware. So if you're having issues with Broadcom, don't come to me. All right, I've already got a couple of emails from partners, okay, and customers. So we are officially, I think, middle of last year, we've got the largest market share globally from a backup vendor perspective. On Gartner, we've been the leader on the Gartner quadrant for the past 2-3 years. When Veeam first came to market, we were seen as like an SME solution. So that has changed over the years. So according to the stats, we have 81% of the Fortune 500 companies using our solution in the environment. Okay. They don't like me mentioning it, but I know it's happening here and everywhere. We do also have a free version of our software, okay, for smaller customers. Okay, so if you do have a stretched budget, you can start with the free product, and when the budget allows, you can move up and start paying salt for some licenses. Okay, so we went through a bit of a product restructure about 2 years ago. So it is now called the Veeam Data Platform. So all that we did was we consolidated a lot of our products into one solution. All right. So, you know, we used to have licensing just for VMware and Hyper-V, and then we had separate licenses for all the different other solutions. So currently today, when you buy the product, you can basically back up and do DR and all the rest of it for probably 80 to 90% of your workloads. The only additional licenses that you might need to buy is if you've got Kubernetes in the environment. So we're starting to see a lot of Kubernetes coming up, all right, whether you're going to be using OpenShift or SUSE, or I don't want to start name dropping, but that is becoming very, very dominant. Well, more, it's happening more often. And if you are using Kubernetes, you can't use a traditional backup tool to actually back up those nodes. That's a new word I've had to learn this year, nodes. All right? So that's something you're going to have to learn. We've already had a couple of customers that have tried to use Veeam to back up those virtual machines running on Kubernetes. It's not going to work. There's a solution that we've got called Kasten. It's a separate solution. You're going to have to buy something like that. Okay. But we also cover things like Office 365. I've yet to find anyone in my region that uses Salesforce. If you are, please come to me, because we can back up your Salesforce environment as well. Okay. So I'm just going to touch on sort of what Veeam historically is known for, and then I'll get into sort of a lot of the security stuff. Drion's joined us. This is his first visit to Namibia, so don't upset him or else he won't come back. But the guy, so I showed him if you don't know, Salt's have got a little bot, okay, on WhatsApp. So I showed it to him yesterday for the first time he had seen it. And we were having lunch at Arabush, and after half an hour, I was like, can I have my phone back? He was sitting there talking to this bot, asking this bot all these questions about Veeam. Okay, so he's our engineer. If you have any technical issues, or if you need clarification on anything, please come to our stand, and Driano will help you with a big smile on his face. All right. So secure backup, the gentleman from Salt touched on it. So this is something that's been around since about 2015-ish. It's a way that Veeam automatically tests your backups for you. So as part of this automation process, we were trying to make your life as easy as possible and trying to remove a lot of these manual processes. Sure Backup automatically tests your backups for you. And we've got Sure Replica for testing your replication jobs. And part of that functionality, we use a thing called a data lab. All right? Now that data lab is being used more and more often when it comes time to do a restore. Because what we'll actually do in that data lab is, depending on what antivirus program you're using, we've got an API that integrates into that data lab. So before you present the data back into your production environment, we can actually do an AV scan of that workload to make sure there's no vulnerabilities in that workload before we present it back into your production environment. Okay. Instant restore is something that Veeam's been renowned for. All right. I was at a customer yesterday. He's been using Veeam for about 4 or 5 years now, and I still get complimented on it. The ease of use, the fact that it, you right-click restore, there's about 90 different restore options. Whether you want to do a file level restore, an entire VM restore, a SQL database restore, and that restore is instant. Okay, we're one of the few vendors that can do it, so we'll instantly boot up that virtual machine. Doesn't matter if it's 100 gigs or 100 terabytes, and in the background, we'll start rehydrating the data. And one thing that's become key in the last couple years is this, well, we're calling it cloud mobility. So initially, if you backed up VMware, you couldn't restore it to Hyper-V. All right, there was some type of gentleman's agreement between Veeam and VMware and Microsoft. Somewhere along the line, that line got crossed, and now Veeam just does restores anywhere you want. So if you've backed up a physical Linux box and SWACOP, you can restore it to AWS in Sweden if you want. All right. So we've got this cross-platform restore now, and that's helped customers a lot as well, especially if you do have something like a physical server. I know at one stage there were lots of hardware delays getting hardware to our region. After COVID, Africa wasn't really seen as a priority, and they were shipping hardware to all the other countries in the world. And we were sitting here in the south going, well, can you just send me a tape drive, please? Or my power supply's packed up, there's nothing available. So what that resulted in is customers were taking these physical servers and using Veeam just to quickly boot them up as a virtual machine, get whatever the application was up and running, and then as soon as the power supply came back, or the RAM or the hard drive, whatever the case was, they could then restore it back as a physical machine if that was a requirement. Generally, they actually just kept it running as a virtual machine, to be honest. Okay, so there's no silver bullet when it comes to, I know some people talk about onions. I live in Johannesburg, and I like to talk about our security. So there's no single solution. You're going to have multiple solutions in place to protect your data. So my example, my data is my family. All right. In Johannesburg, I've got a 6-foot-high fence that apparently you can't cut, but the guys have managed to cut it. A 8-foot-high electric fence, multiple spotlights, 4 dogs, motion beams, burglar bars. Then I've got my alarm system in the house, and then I've got my wife. All right. So you have to have this multi-layered approach to protect your data, to protect what's precious to you. Okay, and that's the same with your software and with your firewalls and whatever else that you need to put in place. Veeam is generally seen as the last line of defense. Okay, so you need to make sure that you can recover the data. You've got this multi-layered approach. If you are reliant on having a physical server, you can actually restore it as a virtual machine, or restore it on a cloud platform, or restore it to Salt. Okay, so have an off-site backup. The monitoring that's built into, so we've got a product called Veeam One. It's still my favorite product. It will basically sit and just monitors your environment 24/7. And there's a very nice security dashboard that we've actually built into Veeam One, which I'll show you at the end of the slide deck. And again, we're trying to keep things as simple as possible, and we try and do as much as possible through automation. Okay, everyone's throwing out AI, so I'm going to throw out AI as well. So there's a lot of AI that's now been built into Veeam, which is intuitive, that actually learns what these malware algorithms and all the rest of it look like, so we can flag stuff before it causes any issues in your environment. Okay, so what do I need to back up? So this is always a nice one when you ask a customer. And every single department seems to think their data is the most critical data, and they can't live without that data. So that is always the most difficult conversation to have within a company. So I usually split them into 3, or tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 applications. So within my environment, if anything happens, I need to get those 5 VMs up and running first. Okay? Then my tier 2 applications and my tier 3 applications. Tier 3 is usually the guys' laptops with their My Documents, which is always family photos. So that's the last thing you worry about in case of a disaster. All right. So you identified critical data. How do you detect that you actually have malware in the environment? So what we've seen happen is this malware sits in your backup job. So it's sitting in your production environment. You've now backed up that data. All right. So you now get a malware attack, and you go, great, I've got a backup. You go to your backup, restore it, and all you're doing is now you're representing that malware back into your environment. Okay, so what steps have you got into place to ensure that you're not backing up data that's already compromised. Okay? How fast can you recover? So Veeam's instant restore, I think I've already touched on that. And what disaster plans do you have in place? So once you identified your 3 application levels, how are you going to make sure that you can actually recover that data? And that's part of the testing and that Veeam has actually automated. All right. So like I said, I've been coming back to Namibia quite a few times, and Veeam always used to harp on about the 3-to-1 rule. Okay, and that was before ransomware came along. So the 3-to-1 rule historically was always make sure you got 3 copies of your data. Okay, gone are the days, I hope, that customers aren't backing up to their production storage. All right, please have separate storage to back up to. If the guys have got access to your production storage and that's where your backups are sitting, not a good idea. Okay. So different media as well, so 2 different media. We've always advocated to have 1 copy off-site. I won't mention the company, but there was a company in Durban. They thought they had followed the 3-to-1 rule. They ticked all the boxes. They had this off-site copy. One weekend, the engineer needed to quickly get access to the remote site where the backups were sitting. He downloaded one of those free FTP programs. Next. Got in, but he never uninstalled the free software off his laptop. And when we actually did the deep dive, because these guys got in and deleted all of his backups from the offsite location, and when we actually went through the process with him to see what had happened, that was how the guys had actually got in. The guy was in a rush, quickly needed something, installed this freeware, just went admin password or whatever he did is because he was in a rush, and that's how the guys got access to the data. So, tape's not dead, all right? Tape still has a place in this. So tape is a great, but don't leave the tape in the tape drive. All right, there's an eject button. A lot of these, they auto-eject. I've already had 2 or 3 cases where the guys were like, well, they deleted my tape. Well, push eject. Take it off site, okay? So we can't help you in that type of situation. You know, well, if it's deleted, it's gone. There are tools that we can try and help and advise on tools and ways and means to recover the data if it has been deleted, but quite often it's too late. Okay. So what we've introduced is air gapping. So I'm English and I struggle with immutability. Now that I've been saying it often enough, I've learned to say it. But just stick with the word air gapped. Okay. So make sure your data is air gapped. All right. So what that means is it's totally separate to the rest of your environment. Okay. If someone's managed to get into your network, there's no link between your production environment and your offsite location. So make sure it's air gapped. And please test your backups. All right. You can't use the excuse I'm too busy. Veeam's automated that process. We automatically test your backups. And when we are testing the backups, we can use that API to actually do the A/B scan as part of the test. Okay. So please leverage that. Have I forgotten anything? I think that's it. I'm trying to catch up on time for you guys. Okay, so backup is your last line of defense. All right. I'm not a photocopy salesman. I'm not a used car salesman. But I feel like we're sort of the insurance company of your data. So we're sort of your last line of defense. We're the insurance if anything happens to your data. Okay, so just like you insure your car, Veeam is the insurance for your data. So we're the last line of defense. Okay, so if you have concerns, please come to us. We can do a remote session. Go to Salt. They can do a remote session or an on-site session because they're based here. And they'll do like a little security assessment to see where the vulnerabilities are. Okay, but I'm coming to a tool that we've just launched, which actually helps you with that process now as well. Okay, so 12.1 is the latest version of Veeam. If you are a Veeam user, okay, please ensure you've got 12.1 installed. All right. I don't think we will launch a version 13. We might skip 13 and go straight to 14. Because some people are a bit suspicious about 13. So we launched 12.1 in December. In my experience, it's probably the biggest update we've ever done. Although it wasn't seen as a major update because it's a 12.1, when I went through, because customers were like, well, what new features do we get? There's 40 pages of new features, new functionality advancements, and that's just on backup and replication. On Veeam 1, there are about 20 pages of updates that were launched in 12.1. So I'm not going to go through them with you. I'll email you the PDF. Okay, and you can go through. So from a security perspective, multi-factor authentication has been available for about 2 years already. A lot of my customers are not. Okay, so Drian will go through most of these with you. Oh, now it's small on my screen. All right. So the ones that the customers are most interested in is that the built-in AI. Okay, so Veeam is doing pre-scanning before we back up the jobs now. All right, so while we're running those backup jobs, we're actually scanning it to pick up any type of malware, ransomware, or anything malicious that might be already in your environment. Okay, if we pick up something, there's an automated process that you can put into place on what you want Veeam to do. Must we continue with the backup job? Must we pause the backup job? Must we, raise alarms and flags and whatever else is required? So we've got remediation steps in place if we do pick up something that might be malicious. Okay, so that's something a lot of guys have been asking for, and there's a lot of interest in it. The 4 R's. So human error or human, I think maliciousness is a word, but I'm going to use it anyway. You don't want someone within the organization doing something malicious. Okay? Staff do get upset at times. They didn't get a pay increase in December, so they come back early in January and do something they shouldn't be doing. So we've introduced this 4 R's admin, or it might even be someone that's hacked into your system and they've managed to get the login details, whatever the situation is. So basically we've got multi-factor authentication. We've also introduced 4 R's, which basically says, okay, well, you've gone through every other process. We just want to ask Nigel over there if it's okay for you to make those changes. Okay, so it's another step that we can put in place for you just to ensure that nothing malicious is potentially happening in the environment. The Yara is part of the malware scanning and that we've introduced. So with that air gapping or the immutability, quite often we need to integrate with various storage or hardware vendors. So there's a couple that we've listed there. What we have found is the most popular is actually just using a hardened Linux repository. Okay, so Drian, I don't know if he's starting to get a bit irritated with this now, but he's actually got quite a nice little wiki that he found that he'll share with you, and it basically is, I would call it hardened Linux repositories for dummies. All right, that's not his official title, but it's literally step for step, screenshots. So you can go and deploy Ubuntu or SUSE or whatever sort of Linux flavor that you want, and it allows you to totally lock down your backup storage. Okay, so there's no way that anyone can remotely get in there, and then we'll do a lock on the data. So for a set time period, if you want, no one can edit, delete, or do anything to your backup jobs. Okay. So this is one of the nice new screens that Veeam has now launched. So you don't want to be sitting at 37%. So this is basically like Veeam's threat sensor. All right. So it's actually quite fun to watch guys now. They run this report, and then they sort of challenge themselves to try and get to that 100%. I actually had there's a bank in Maputo. And when did he implement this? I think it was in about January, 12.1, yeah, so January. They're actually banks are usually quite conservative when it comes to doing updates. They'll usually run one version behind of everyone else. But this particular bank in Maputo, they're always cutting edge. So the guy wanted to play with this, and I can't remember the exact score, but he wasn't doing too badly. I think he was sitting at about 60%. I think by the end of March, he sent me a screenshot. I don't remember if it was Drian or Mark who helped him, but he put them on copy as well with his boss, obviously, because you want to impress your boss, showing that they were now at 100%. Okay, so it's a nice little way for you to gauge how secure your environment is. So it's a great tool that you can use. And this is my last slide. So this is also So that little previous dashboard is sort of running 24/7. It's always monitoring and checking what's happening in your environment. This is like a little quick check that, I know you can't read it, but it's a little quick check that you can do so that at any stage, so if you go and do a change in your environment, you want to see if that's improved things or made things worse, you can just quickly run this little analyzer tool, and it will tell you exactly what you need to fix in order for you to get to that 100%.